Over 2,000 people have been arrested in crackdowns of pro-Palestine protests on college campuses over the past month. And now, New York City officials and Donald Trump are claiming there must be outside agitators involved because they have bike locks and signs. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. But I don't have to tell you, there's a lot going on right now. The presidential race is a dead heat. We're waiting on the Supreme Court to tell us if presidents have complete and total immunity to do whatever the hell they want. Beavis and Butthead are real guys now. And like weirdly hot real guys. There's also the first ever criminal trial of a former president, which is somehow not even the day's top story. Can you imagine going back in time and telling yourself 10 years ago that an ex-president who waged a coup to stay in power would fall asleep multiple times and at one point reportedly even pass gas during his criminal trial, not for waging the coup, which is a different trial that we might not even get to, but for paying hush money to a porn star to stop her from telling the world about his weirdly shaped penis. And it wouldn't be the biggest headline in the newspaper every single day. You'd be like, no way, I'm gonna tell everyone about this on my favorite well-functioning website, Twitter. It's a fun place. It's a fun place to meet friends. I hope they never rename this after the scariest of the letters. And on top of all that, they keep recycling old characters from previous seasons, like this old pal who showed up at a Trump rally in Wisconsin on Wednesday.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage businessman Mike Lindell.
Thank you, Wisconsin. God bless you all. I know a lot of you were out in the parking lot and you probably see me getting attacked by a journalist out there.
Mike, that wasn't a journalist, that was a pigeon. He's biased. He keeps accusing me of orchestrating a coup. Coup. I've been working on my... Coup. Coup, coup. Also, it doesn't speak highly of your presidential campaign event when one of your featured guests starts his speech by saying, "You probably saw me getting attacked in the parking lot." Even if you take the attacked part out, it's not great. You can trust me. I'm the guy from the parking lot. Thankfully, though, Lindell, as he always does, recovered and continued.
This has been a battle of biblical proportions between good and evil. And one of the things that's going on is that you have this bucket of common sense that is our real president, Donald Trump, right? He's the most courageous person I've ever met in my life, by the way. I mean, you know, people ask me where I get my energy. I get it from God, but I also get it. He's a perfect example of what courage should be, and I watch that every day.
People ask me where I get my energy, and I tell them I get it from God, because I certainly don't get it from a good night's sleep. My pillow is absolute garbage. I'd rather sleep on a pile of coal or a pile of broken glass, and I keep having nightmares about these two demons I saw on the news. One of them said his name was Cornholio, and he needed TP for bunghole. Also, can we go back to this?
We have this bucket of common sense that is our real president, Donald Trump.
These guys are so brainwashed by Donald Trump, they think common sense comes in the same receptacle as fried chicken. Generally speaking, you don't compliment someone by comparing them to a bucket. If you wanted to tell your significant other they're beautiful, you'd never say, well, you're just a big old bucket of good looks. So there's a lot going on, and as we've just proved, it's easy to get distracted. But there is one story that feels impossible to ignore right now, and that's what's happening on college campuses across the country.
Breaking news and live pictures out of Los Angeles, where police are raiding an encampment of demonstrators on the campus of UCLA after a day of tensions. Police fired what appeared to be non-lethal rounds at some of the protesters.
You just heard those flashbangs right there. We've seen tear gas deployed, pepper spray as well.
Here at the University of Texas in Austin, police officers took dozens of people into custody after they ignored orders to leave the university's south lawn.
Emory University saw professors there who were detained, one saying, quote, "I felt like I was in a war zone with all the police and their weapons, the rubber bullets, and more."
Hundreds of officers on Columbia's campus tonight after the university asked them to clear out pro-Palestinian protesters who had set up an encampment and taken over a building just last night.
I've covered many protests here in New York City. I have never seen a response like this, a mobilization like this, the way the NYPD came in with such force.
Drones allowed us to do a complete analysis of the Hamilton building encryption of our radios. Because they were not able to monitor and hear our deployment tactics, it allowed us to have the element of surprise.
Element of surprise? Did you see footage of the police approaching the school? Usually when there are that many police together at one time, Bane's about to trick them into the Gotham City tunnels. And not to get sidetracked on a plot point from 2012's Dark Knight Rises, but why did the whole police department go into the tunnels at the same time? As a New Yorker, I just want to say I really appreciate knowing that this is where my tax dollars are going, using drones to round up co-eds rather than, say, keeping libraries open or building affordable housing or making sure the F train isn't a total piece of shit. I like the delays. It gives me a chance to do the Wordle. There's even a new special F train Wordle where the words are twice as long. The other day, my train was trapped for 15 minutes between stops because Pizza Rat was on the tracks and all the other rats wanted a photo. There were even 2 tourist rats from Germany. You could tell from their lederhosen. Oh my God, I fought so hard to get that in, and it was such a dud. So the NYPD responded with advanced technology and unprecedented force to a college protest. Columbia and New York City officials said they were left with no choice. And I mean, let's face it, it's not like they had any alternatives. Unfortunately, there's just no other way for a college to deal with a protest like this.
We also have news just out of Brown University, which has come to agreement with protesters there. The university says it will hold a vote on divestment from Israel later this year, that is, ending investments in Israel. It's a key demand from students. Students have said that in response to that, they will disband the encampment by 5 p.m. Eastern today.
Well, what about our drones? If there's a peaceful settlement, what are we going to do with all our drones? I know, maybe instead of taking the F train, the drones can fly us to work. Unlike Brown, city officials and administrators of Columbia bowed to pressure from some of the most powerful figures in the country, like Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson, who traveled to Columbia to demand a crackdown on the protesters.
If this is not contained quickly, and if these threats and intimidation are not stopped, there is an appropriate time for the National Guard. My message to the students inside the encampment is go back to class and stop the nonsense. Stop wasting your parents' money.
If Johnson does get ousted as Speaker, he should get a job as Killjoy Dean from an 80s movie. Mike Johnson should be holding a press conference saying, "Stop squandering your inheritance on these ridiculous pranks. And one more thing, a werewolf can't play basketball." Now, NYPD officials and the mayor have sought to justify their violent crackdown by claiming there were so-called outside agitators involved in the protest, but their evidence for that claim has been flimsy at best.
We totally believe that most of this was being led by professionals, and when we mean by professionals, we're talking about people who go in with tactics and try and train people, and their objective is to escalate the situation. This is not what students, bring to school.
You found that in the building.
Yeah, these were on a lot of the doors.
Tell us about this change.
Yeah, so when we entered Hamilton Hall, this is not what students bring to school.
It's not, because it looks like a bike lock to me. Here, I'll show you. One of my writers brought this in. He rides his bike to work because it's faster than the F train. Seriously, that's your evidence that outside agitators... I've never wanted more there to be like a trapdoor all the way down to the bottom of 30 Rock. Like, just the whole rest of the closer look is like... Seriously, that's your evidence that outside agitators were involved? What other high-level reconnaissance did you guys do? The protesters were also using highly advanced nonverbal signal technology to send messages to one another. But the mayor and the NYPD weren't the only ones who had some theories about the supposed outside agitators. Donald Trump also called into Fox News this week with a very trenchant observation.
Well, I really think you have a lot of paid agitators, professional agitators in here, too, and I see it all over. And, when you see signs and they're all identical, that means they're being paid by a source. These aren't hand-painted signs where people would go to their basement and paint something because they really believed it. These are all signs that are identical. They're made by the same printer.
Oh my God, he's right. That can only mean one thing. The outside agitator is Kinko's.
Bucket of common sense.
Seriously, do you think a political gathering with a bunch of printed signs that all look the same is evidence of something nefarious? In that case, let's send the National Guard to break up the next Trump rally. The signs at Trump rallies look so recently printed, I'm surprised they're not too hot to hold. I would hope that there's maybe one thing we can all agree on. No matter how you feel about the protesters, we should spend less time arguing about college kids and more time focusing on what the protests are about. The point Senator Bernie Sanders made on Wednesday.
Well, I suggest to CNN and maybe some of my colleagues here, maybe take your cameras just for a moment off of Columbia and off of UCLA. Maybe go to Gaza and take your camera and show us the emaciated children who are dying of malnutrition because of Netanyahu's policies.
He's right. The story is what's happening in Gaza. That's what the protests are about. And always, I will say, I love Bernie's delivery. It really helps him drive home the point he's making. He's like a grandpa reminding everyone to stop texting at dinner. Maybe take your eyes off your phones and make eye contact at the table. In my day, there was no such thing as a GIF. When we were surprised, we just did this. And then if somebody missed it, you would just loop it and do it again. As we've said on this show before, the misery and devastation in Gaza is horrifying. It must end. At the same time, it is important to be clear. Anti-Semitism is vile, must be rejected in all its forms. Anti-Semitic harassment has no place anywhere, including on a college campus. And the constitutional right to protest, the actions of any government, should be protected. And Jewish students should feel safe at school. All of these things can and should be true at once. To quote my favorite college professor, that just seems to me like...
bucket of common sense.
This has been A Closer Look.